The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 42 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this episode, we discuss From Farm to Fork, making St. Kitts and Nevis food secure and self-sufficient.
Good afternoon to all of the folks in St. Kitts and Nevis and overseas who are tuned into ZIZ and other media houses to join us for Conversations 2025. And Conversations 2025 is a series of just that, conversations that we will be having in the lead up to independence that focus on our independence theme. Today, we're going to be talking about moving from farm to fork. I should have said, my name is Toni Frederick-Armstrong, and I'm joined today by some folks who I think can give us some real insight in from farm to fork and how we make St. Kitts and Nevis food secure and self-sufficient. We've been having this kind of conversation for years, and we are still facing some of the same issues that we have been for years. I'm joined today by three experts in the agricultural field. First, we have Mr. Winston Morris, who is a farmer and former educator.
Thank you.
Mr. Ian Chapman, who is the crops leader at the Department of Agriculture in St. Kitts. Good afternoon. And on my far right, we have Mr. Randy Elliott, the Director of Agriculture from Nevis, braved the high seas to come over to join us today. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon. What I'd like to do before we get into the conversation is ask you what farm to fork means to you. We're hearing it tossed around quite a bit, but what does it mean to Mr. Morris?
Well, when you say farm, when you say farm to fork, you're basically calling my name, all right? Because I've been in this business for a very long time, and over 60 odd years, and it has been my job. Sometimes I want to say that people give me that to do for them, and I am glad that I'm able to do it up to now, even at my young age, and so on. So farm to fork really talks about what do you do to get to produce the food and to put it on your table. That's basically what it's all about. And there are a number of issues that involve on the farm, between the farm and the market, and even after the market. And so I think we'll be discussing a lot of those issues as we continue this afternoon.
And Mr. Chapman, as crops leader with the Department of Agriculture, this is also something that you live and breathe. What does farm to fork mean to you?
Well, Toni, farm to fork to me, personally, as Mr. Morris would have indicated, is not even, for me, it starts even before the farm. Yeah. It starts even before the farm because the seed must be manufactured by the seed company and, of course, the fertilizers, and notwithstanding some of the insecticides that you may have to use, which should not be somewhat encouraged. And of course, we should always try to make sure what we have is an integrated pest management strategy approach as to things, of course, that will have dialogue with along the way with different practices that you can do in that IPM strategy. But it all begins from those to the farmer, of course. The farmer involved with the component of the arm of the agricultural ministry or department, the extension, the research, the even up to the soil scientists, the different aspects that would help to govern there. then ultimately from there, maybe to the marketing chain, and then from the marketing chain to the end result, to the consumers, not just as I heard Mr. Morris say, to the table, but I would now further it and say, at the end result, when the food is consumed by the consumer. That is my personally farm to fork approach. And things. So that whole complete chain from the seed, the different distributors along the chain, right down to the end user, the consumer, which ultimately consuming their food for their everyday, daily life sustenance.
Okay, so it's a lot of steps along the way.
A lot of steps along the way.
Mr. Elliott. No.
Well, for me, the concept of farm to fork, to me, it's more take you in the local context in terms of the movement, more so of local food, local produced food. And it's the ability for food to move from the farm gate, from harvesting to the end consumer within the shortest period of time. It is an opportunity for where the end consumers could actually consume. Well, with the exception of the farmer, who's probably, while he's harvesting, he probably tasting his produce. But it's for the end consumer to be able to have access to that food in the freshest state possible.
No, Mr. Chapman laid out a sequence of events that's quite clear. And yes, seed, soil, climate, water, all of those things to get that seed into food, all the way to me eating it. What then in that sequence would you say are the measurable gaps? So now let's get it down to what we're dealing with today and what the challenges may be. But what are the measurable gaps right now that exist between, and we're talking about local food production, between local food production and consumption? No, it doesn't have to be in order, and I'm interested because you went through all of those. You had your list. So let's start with you, Mr. Chapman. What in all of those you think is the greatest challenge at this time?
Well, of course, the greatest challenge is that we, as a country, St. Kitts Nevis, is not a producer of the start product. We depend on the outside world for these products. We don't have a seed bank or seed things that will truly generate that. Again, we don't have a manufacturing company that will manufacture the fertilizer or the different, whatever is needed for the. So there for me is where the most gap is, because we are somewhat dependent upon the shipping. And as we know in this, say, hurricane season, any disruption internationally disrupts what goes on locally. Just a point in case, when there was, there still is the war between Russia and Ukraine, you would have seen the movement of fertilizers couldn't maybe move from those parts of the world because of that. And that would have, this could disrupt the production systems here. We're still not saying that we cannot use other measures of the organic approach where things, but of course, we all know that farmers, and once persons want a food in a quick response, and use of some of these synthetic fertilizers will aid the production system to respond in a more faster manner that we have the consumers get this product. And as the director from Nevis would have rightly said, in our own local context, of course. So, as for me, that is the widest gap in terms of it, because from time we have these supplies on the ground, I think our farmers are well educated and well knowledge enough and equipped to ensure that each of the necessary strategies that is required after that is adhered to.
Okay, well first, and I want to say, gentlemen, feel free to jump in. Okay. You don't have to wait and say until I say, what do you think? So with that said, and we will check in with you all for what you think are the greatest gaps. But while we're talking about that gap right at the starting point, I'm going to ask you all, how do we address it? And I think you kind of hinted at it when you were talking about, there are more organic means of starting crops and so on. How do we, because we're talking about self-sufficiency, make ourselves not dependent on the shipping lanes? because as you say, war, hurricane. When the other day we had some high seas for a couple of days, and the produce boat couldn't land, and you went into the supermarkets, which was where most of the people are buying their produce, and the shelves were empty. And that was a couple of days. They had to go down and come back up. So just within 1 week, we were already seeing a problem. And that applies to the fertilizers and so on. And we have to get into the whole fertilizer conversation if time permits, because that's a whole other story. But let's talk about getting what we need to start. And is there a way to mitigate or make ourselves less dependent on that importation part of the equation?
I want to think so. I think there are several avenues that we can do. And sometimes we take things for granted. And there are some simple things that we can do to make it easier for us and sustainable. All right? So sometimes you may not even have to go and buy the inorganic fertilizers. You can use what you have. All right?
Such as? Remember, we're not all experts here, such as?
All right? Sometimes we have a lot of foliage that we can use.
To compost and so?
We can do composting. We can put them in, like I do. I mean, a lot of the things I will be saying is a lot of things that I do as a farmer, everyday farmer that I do. And one of the things that I do, I make a liquor on my farm by using bush and grass and leftover tomatoes and eggplants and so on.
Composting?
No. I make
some sort of fermentation.
Fertilizer. Yes. So I take all of those, and I have right now a 45-gallon drum that I put the material in, and I fill it with water, and I leave it for a couple
So
of
your
months.
liqueur that you're referring to is a fertilizer?
It's a liquid fertilizer.
Okay.
It's a liquid fertilizer.
Okay.
A lot of nutrients that.
What about good old manure? Is that still?
That too that we can.
Because we have a lot of cows.
I also use that for a liquid manure too.
Okay.
Because I will take the manure, like I will take maybe a bag of poultry manure that I will get from my students too in Tabernacle and so on, and you'll put them in the same jar, similar jar, and you leave it there for a couple of times and so on, and it'll take off the liquid. And I normally feed it through my fertilizer, my irrigation system, known as fertigation.
Oh, so you're watering and fertilizing?
Same time, fertigation. So you can just get it and you put it to yourself. You have a simple tool, an injector that you can buy, not very inexpensive, and so on.
Or you can make. Or you can make.
Or you can make your own, and so on. And I use that regularly.
Okay.
And you said it through the thing. Sometimes I wonder, how the plants look so good, you know what I mean? But you know that you really would have put in some foliar fertilizer inside there, and they have foliar fertilizer that you sell in the hardware or even by A&M that you can use and to spray on top of the leaves and so on. But if you don't have that, you have a lot of bush around here, a lot of grass where people will want you cut them down, and you can use them and so on and so on. The weeds that you get, you can put them in the drum and so on. And you're good to go. If you look at the chemistry of what is there, so you will see how good it is and so on. So some of those things, and it's sustainable and it's efficient, and your crops looking really well, really well.
Now, Mr. Elliott, would you like to weigh in on this, how we address this gap? I mean, it sounds like Mr. Morris has the solution. Is it the solution?
Well,
and of course, there are things like the seeding. Can we address that?
Well, a lot of it is re-educating our population, and a lot of it will have to start from re-educating. And again, sometimes we look and we have the mindset that if it doesn't come from overseas, then we can't do it here. We here in St. Kitts Nevis, we have been very fortunate, both Ian and myself as technicians, Mr. Morris as a farmer, in terms of numerous training from our allied agencies, such as ICA, FAO, CADI, the Republic of China, and Taiwan, in terms of training as it relates to compost making, compost tea making. And also, even when we look at seeds, we also have to look at retraining some of our farmers, but also training the consumers, because some of these vegetables that we use, some of the seeds are reusable. One of the things that we'll have to look at in terms of seed selection, because a number of persons who are farming in the backyard, they do reuse seeds. They don't always depend on commercial seeds. But sometimes what you find happen in terms of reusing seeds, you may not get all your tomatoes coming out shaping the same. They may not come all the same size, etc. And as a farmer, as a commercial farmer, putting multiple things within the supermarket that are not uniform, someone might say your stuff is not good, but really and truly, it is still good.
Is that just the natural process of reusing seeds, or is there something we should be doing to those reused
No, that's the
seeds?
natural.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the natural process
So
of
where
reusing
do
seeds.
the seeds come from the crop.
Well,
so where do those original seeds that make the perfect shaped tomato come from?
Well, as Mr. Chapman indicated, that a lot of the seeds that we use for commercial agriculture, these are seeds that are produced by seed banks. And
Are they manipulated?
Yes.
not necessarily,
Some of them.
because
Depends on what.
there's some seeds that you find traits or genetics within the seed that will give you, for instance, a particular shape. They will give you a particular color, etc. Right? But also, if you, for instance, take a papaya case scenario, and if you are to select seeds from any papaya around, and you take the seeds from within the center of the papaya, most of your plants come back, they will come a female or hermaphrodite, right? You would hardly get males. You may get 1% male once you select the seeds from within that belt. But most of your fruits come back the same. So again, a lot of
So
it
it's a
is...
selection thing as
Yes,
well.
a lot
So it
of it
doesn't
is-
necessarily mean genetic modification.
No.
Okay. All right. Now, we've addressed the alternatives for fertilizing and generating, I guess, is that the correct term for the use of seeds? Or we start things?
In relation to the use of the seeds, I really like the use of what we call the F1 generation. When you get your seeds, normally they are hybrids, okay? Because they will give you energy, they give you a lot of production, resistance to this pest, resistance to that. But the F1 generation will lose a lot of that good vigor and so on. But they are usable, because I have done that quite a bit. Especially with sweet peppers, because sweet pepper seeds now are very, very expensive. Right? 1,000 seed of peppers right now will cost you over 400 and something EC dollars. No matter where you go, local, international, any kind of other.
What kind of yield you're going to get out of that? A pepper per seed?
Eh?
But you might not get a pepper per seed.
You ought to get plenty more pepper per seed.
Well, with that, the yield should be somewhere per plant ranging around 4 to 5 pounds once the
Per seed? Or
per stand, per seed becomes a
When you
plant.
say per seed,
Anyway, but gentlemen, hang on a
Yes.
second. I know we were saying that, would we be able to fill this time? We did say that. But we're still on his gaps. So let's talk. So you gave us what you thought was the main gap. We do have so many more things to talk about, but I don't want to deprive you all. Is there something in the system that you think really is the critical gap that we need to address as a nation?
One of the things that I have on my top of my list is supporting the local farmers and producers. And there are two aspects there, maybe more than two. But on farm, we need the support for the farmers. As we said, we talk about education. We need to continually educate them as to what the varieties are, how they can produce, and so on. And we also need a lot more farm visits from the department officials. Because sometimes, even though I'm a seasoned farmer, I still want to see your face in the place. To come on the farm and say, Mr. Moss, what are you doing? And say, so and so. You say, all right, go ahead, do good. It urges me to do better. That is lacking big time. Maybe I don't know if on Nevis and St. Kitts, but not on St. Kitts, it's very lacking. We don't get enough visits from the officials. I mean, I don't want to talk too hard, but I would just leave it at that and so on.
So for you, it's just for the encouragement?
Encouragement. let me know that I'll do something good. You know what I mean? All of us, it doesn't matter what your career is, you need
So
support.
I have a controversial question in that regard then for the director. Is that the role of the department?
Yes.
To give pep talks to your farmers?
Well,
I'm just a genuine question.
Well, in a nutshell, it's basically to support the farmers technically, provide technical advice, etc. Sometimes you may go by a farm and you realize, hey, okay, this farmer is really doing good. And I'll be honest, a lot of the farmers, they have a lot of knowledge, and a lot of knowledge have been developed over years of experience, failures, etc. So a lot of the times also that you may go by a farmer and you may realize, hey, this farmer is really doing something that I didn't know. Mm-hmm. So even telling the farmer, boy, you really taught me something today. That again pushed the farmer over edge to even do a little better.
That's right.
Yeah, so it actually goes a long way. It actually goes a long way.
Yeah. All right. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about that is that the support of the farmers, especially in the marketing of the produce. And I will give you a scenario right now that I've experienced 2 weeks ago, where I do planting quite a bit. And I used to produce planting. I used to do about 50 boxes a week on the market and so on. I can't do it now because the hurricane blew me down 3 years in a row, so I can't manage that no more. But there are new farmers who are doing plantings right now, and they are producing quite a bit of plantings. Mr. Chapman and the ministry, they brought in a number of suckers for them, and when I was talking to at the opening one time, I was telling them, well, if you challenge the farmers, they are going to produce beyond measure.
Okay, now you're using terms that I don't understand. Suckers. What are suckers?
Oh, for your sake, those are the seedlings. The planting and banana seedlings.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
no, I've learned something.
Right. So
that's another
really
seedlings,
so
right?
Okay,
right.
Well, that's the planting material.
But talk to me about the marketing aspect.
The marketing aspect.
How can the agriculture department and ministry assist in this regard?
Okay, so the scenario is that we are producing now, based on the thousands of suckers that we brought in, right? And that they are now in production, really good. One farmer has 5 acres, producing really well. And then I called him one time and tell him, how come that this supermarket has so much plantings on his shelf and they're not local? They tell me, why, Mr. Mace, I was up at the porch, you know, when I see this amount of boxes of planting coming in, you know. It's about 200. When I talked to the persons up at the supermarket, he said, yes, they said they brought in over 200 boxes of plantings. I said, but the gentleman tell me, well, but Mr. Mike is one of my students too. And he said, but I got 150 boxes in store. That's what you're talking about. He said, yeah, and he brought in 200. So when they come, they just put them on the market.
All right.
So we now, even me in my small production, got to squeeze in, see if I get a little place to put in mine. So that need to be addressed.
Okay, so you need assistance in getting your produce into the local supermarkets? Is that what you're saying?
No, we're saying we need assistance in reducing the amount of imports.
Like what they do with tomatoes?
Yeah, just like we do with tomatoes. I don't say do it in tomatoes. Do you do tomatoes still? Restricting importation.
We do not restrict any importation.
We're not restricting importation of anything anymore?
You see, so
we're not, or we need to not?
So that's the problem.
Oh, aha! I've touched on something that they don't.
Well, of course, we all know that based on the WTO regulations that we cannot ban or restrict. It's more like, as we say, it's a conversation between all parties. The ministries of agriculture, both St. Nevis, the major suppliers or the outlets that has either Rams, Ballymat, whoever is those persons that is, and the farmers. Of course, it's, as we would always say, it's a conversation and asks for the fair play in the local markets, seen as to, we have this on the ground, and if you could, once all conditions are right for all parties to be involved, both the end user, the consumer, supermarkets, and the farmer to be into place so that we have that still. So that is one of the process now.
So to be clear, you're saying there are instances with the right circumstances and conversations, and I understood that used to be the case with tomatoes, was that if we had almost an oversupply, if you will, of tomatoes on the island, that they would just say, for the time being, let's restrict importation. But it's not, they're not directed to do it, they're asked. So it's up to the local distributor, the local supplier, to decide, okay, the right thing to do then is we won't order, we will get from. Is that how it works?
Yes, it's all a conversation.
And can it work with everything though? Because it just seems so haphazard.
Okay, farmers.
To be honest with you, when we speak of, for instance, production, and we speak of overproduction of planting, etc., one of the things that we always have to be mindset of, and when we speak of, even from our theme in terms of farm to fork, but we speak of food security, we have to understand food security does not always just speak in terms of the availability of food. You also have to be really accessible in terms of, so I'm a farmer and I might have a produce and I have enough to fill the whole market, but my price is out of the reach to the consumer. That's a challenge. And one of the issues that we have in St. Kitts Nevis at times is that prices, outside prices are a lot cheaper than ours. Remember, we speak of a farmer with 5 acres of planting. Yeah, but you might have these planting you see coming in, is probably coming from a farm big like St. Kitts, right? And you also look at what is their cost of production. So a lot of it have to be done in terms of conversations with the importer, conversations also with the farmers and education of the farmers. Because I've had experiences where one asks farmers in terms of cost of production, and it's difficult for them to tell, okay, this is my cost of production. So we realize that we have to...
Why is that?
We have to go back to basics, because a lot of the prices that you may see, a lot of it sometimes is inherited. I may wake up one day and say, I'm moving my cucumbers to $5 a pound.
Because
somebody probably hear that I'm getting mine sold at 5, so they move theirs at 5 also. So one of the things that we have to always look back is get back to basics, and in terms of continue to re-educate our farmers in terms of not just farm for the purpose of farming, but farming as a business, right? And in terms of farming as a business, then a farmer would now be able to say, you know what? Okay, I'm having the challenge in terms of getting my stuff on the market because of this import coming from wherever. Yes, it's probably in high season, wherever it is. I can manfully bring my price down this low. I'm still going to make a profit. I may not be making the markup that I'm normally getting, but I'm still able to make a profit during this time, because that individual, that farmer would have already looked at his cost of production and know how low can they go. Same way like when you walk into a supermarket and you ask, or a store, and you ask for a deal. They may be able to tell you, buy one, you get one half price, because they know how much it costs. They know where they can play. So same way with farmers. Farmers need to know where they can play.
There's so many things just coming out of this conversation. We still haven't heard your gap, and we do have to take a quick break. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be coming back to talk some more about From Farm to Fork on this week's edition of Conversations.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 42 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and a Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this episode, we discuss From farm to fork, making St. Kitts and Nevis food secure and self-sufficient.
Your children's future dwindling.
And welcome back to Conversations. And today we're talking about from farm to fork, making St. Kitts and Nevis food secure and self-sufficient. We have with us Mr. Randy Elliott, who is the Director of Agriculture on Nevis, Mr. Ian Chapman, who is the crops leader at the Department of Agriculture in St. Kitts, and Mr. Winston Morris, who is both a farmer and a former educator, and I understand a former agriculture officer as well. All right. We've agreed in the very brief break that the gaps we all agree on. So beginning and the end. So not that there aren't gaps and weaknesses along the way, but those are critical things. You raised a very interesting topic or area, Mr. Elliott, that I think we need to jump right in, and that is thinking about farming as a business. And if I may give a quick example, and this has been going on for years, where you go into a restaurant and they just tell you, oh yeah, we don't have salad because we don't have any lettuce. Why? Because the guy who was bringing lettuce just doesn't have any lettuce. He came, he sold his 25 heads of lettuce or whatever it was, and he's gone until he needs money again. I'm not saying it's that bad, and we do have some very professional farmers, but I'm a restaurant spouse, and we were warned, you got to have at least 3 suppliers for everything, because this one who's getting you your tomatoes regularly, one day they're just going to tell you they don't have any. Very interestingly, though, I'm finding more and more farmers who are willing to find what you need, even if they don't grow it. And you say, I need 100 heads of lettuce, they will go and buy 25 heads from 4 other people and supply you to keep your business. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the guy or woman who sells, and when the money done, they're going to look to plant some more. And the one who says, I am going to keep my hook in this customer. How do we get people to think about farming as a business? It can be quite lucrative, very. Yeah. And the market is there. We have the restaurants, we have the hotels, we have the consumers who are all very health conscious nowadays, and everybody knows you should be eating fresh produce and so on. So, Mr. Elliott, how do we do that?
Well, in the Nevis context, we would have realized that we have some traditional farmers that would continue to farm within that practice, that they're going to get up, they're going to farm, they're going to make some money, they're going to rest the land for 6-7 months, and then they get back up on farm. And we understand that. And I've been in the sector for just a little over 25 years, right? And so it's something that you would have seen over and over. But with the increase, as you indicated, in terms of supermarkets, hotels, restaurant, the increase in terms of the number of persons coming to your shows, they don't want to hear that excuse that, okay, I don't have tomatoes today, so you can't get tomatoes in your salad, or I don't have lettuce, so you can't get. They don't want to hear that excuse. So what we have done in the context of Nevis, we realized that there was a need for we to bring new blood into the sector. And what we started to target is non-traditional farmers. So that's something that we started to do in Nevis. These are individuals of different professions, like architect, doctors, etc. So we started to bring them into the sector. You roll out, you let them know, okay, these are the inputs. This is the gap that we have between production and imports. This is the potential revenue in terms of once you're able to even, say, capture 10% of this gap. These are your potential. And these individuals would have gone and worked their figures. And these are the same individuals who would have also gone to the banks and invest in terms of their farm. So now these are now investors. So these are now non-traditional farmers.
Okay, a million questions, but I'll ask you 2. What is it that the architect brings to agriculture than Mr. Smith down the road from me? I live in an agricultural area. And is it about money? Do you have to have money to make money in agriculture?
You have to invest.
So you have to have money.
You have to invest.
Or be good for it. You have to be the architect who can say, I make,
you have to invest, because I'll be frank. If you're a farmer and you sit around and continuously sit around until a government do a program, then you will not be going anywhere. Right? So you have to have some skin in the game as a farmer. And if you look around Nevis, especially, for instance, our greenhouse farmers, these are all 100% funded by the individuals. The only thing that we provide to these farmers are technical support, the duties, etc., etc. So these are all we provide to these farmers. And the necessary training, if we don't have the expertise within the federation, then we speak to our ally agencies that relates to, in terms of bringing in someone who knows. As a result, for instance, in Nevis, as a result, we are now fully self-sufficient as it relates to lettuce. Right? In Nevis, you have quite a bit of greenhouse farmers who are actually into lettuce. And when one hears lettuce and you just see the numbers for lettuce, you're like, but these people are competing.
And the lettuce is better than this imported iceberg
But no,
stuff?
they're not competing, because each one of these farmers, they're producing a different lettuce.
Oh.
They're producing a different lettuce. Some
like
are
a different variety.
Different varieties. Some are giving you just salad mix. Some are just giving you the romaine. And they all talk. They all talk. They all share experiences. Yes. So, and we realize that this is something that is working. We continue to emphasize in terms of bringing in additional persons. We have a program that we run every year with our school children, and we realize that some of these same school children now, when they leave, they're now getting into animals. Some of them actually look at agriculture as a profession also. So it is something that we realize that has been working for us. But again, we still continue to have that communication with our traditional farmers. Okay,
and let's talk. I mean, is there hope for the traditional farmer? You talk about how lucrative farming can be, and yet you have the guy who's been farming for 40 years, and he's still, still not saving any money, still not in a place where he can make those necessary investments. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the government can realistically give a farmer everything, but how do we get, Mr. Brown and his little farm that he's been slogging away for 40 years and takes little produce into the market, how do we get him there? Should he be bringing in people to invest with him? How do we get him interested in taking these courses? Do we need cooperatives? I hear about cooperatives. You mentioned, that they discuss and they talk about what's needed. I thought that's kind of how a cooperative ought to work. So again, what are the gaps? What are the gaps between the traditional and this non-traditional? Because to me, everybody should be getting on this bandwagon.
Let me see if I can put in a little bit.
Sure.
Based on my
and Mr. Chapman is looking very contemplative.
My experiences and so on as a traditional slash updated farmer, so to speak.
You're a modern traditional farmer, all right.
So I'm a crossover and so on, because you still do some traditional activities and so on. But I can tell you from day one, like when I started to put in my plantains, a tremendous amount of work. It will cost you upward of $30,000-$40,000 to put in there, to get in the land, I use plastic mulch, I use irrigation lines, I use all of it. It costs you a minimum of $25,000 to do a useful project like that. Minimum. Without any thing and so on. Because the overhead thing and so on, you can't do for my plantings and so on. This is a different thing and so on. It cost me that. You understand? And every year, the last 3 years that I've gone, the hurricane, the wind will come and will blow down every single one. And then you have to go back and think. It costs you another $25,000, $30,000 to do it.
Is it worth it?
No. Because what happened now, after 3 years of that, and so on, I do something. I've taken out some of the plantains, and I go on to some additional crops and so on, tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and so on, because it's not working for me. You know, the covered agriculture is really, really good, especially it really functional in Nevis, doing really, really well. And when I visit those guys and so on, the kind of money they tell you they put in, me as a farmer, boom, out your head, because a tremendous amount of money, buildings and so on, and you know. But when they show you that they make back the money in a short time, it is more than encouraging. The other business part that we want to look at is really the getting your product on the market. Some farmers produce, maybe by encouragement from the extension officer, produce so and so. Like for instance, you bring in suckers and slips and so on. Tell farm, produce. When you go produce now, you produce a lot of stuff, and then you end up with squash, watermelons, pumpkins, tomatoes, plantains, and you can't get them off. You understand?
So what's happening?
Then
what's
what
happening
happens?
though?
It's basically, for me, I want everybody, every association, every organization, every individual to have an input in it. All right? If I am producing stuff and so on, there must be a network that knows that I have stuff.
Is there a coordinating role, though, that the department can take?
If you have,
I thought they kind of did help with that.
If we have that kind of network, it's really networking, my lady. It's networking and so on, and if we are networking, we can get it done. Because I do some of the network myself with farmers. I help them sell some of the stuff because I have a market system over the years that I get the produce and I get them off for them. You know, but that is the best I can do.
Right. Can we use technology? Can there be some system where you can input what you have available and then there's some sort of purchasing or some system where the supermarkets can log in and see, okay, you know, almost like a CIMACO, like a central agency.
Well,
I know the government doesn't necessarily want to go back there,
Well,
but
That's something similar now.
oh yeah,
Well, okay. If I'm to weigh in this here, as you relates to that, one of the things our marketing unit has done, we have created, or the marketing officer or marketing manager has created what she a simple survey that she would have shared with farmers and through the extension that you would have, just as you would have indicated, give a scope of projection as to what are commodities that you will have in the next 4 weeks and things so that
Okay.
So that when you log that in, she would have that information, and then ultimately we share that information with the supermarkets.
Okay.
And things.
Okay.
One of the push that our department is moving, that equipping all of the officers that do the data collection with the tablets and things, so the data is becoming real time. So they visit Mr. Morris at 11:50 p.m. and Mr. Morris has tomatoes forecasted, just calling figure hypothetically 2,000 pounds for October. Then that information is lodged real time at that point in time. So the office will see that and have that whole central thing so that it can be disseminated.
and is it working? I mean, are the supermarkets on board?
It's just in the process now of where we are going. I'm going into that digitalized type of platform where we could now have all of these quick alerts and thing, and trying to make sure that the information is readily transparent.
Which would also address issues like your colleague who has all of those plantains.
Agreed.
And I am sure that locally, that the supermarkets prefer to buy locally because they can get the produce faster. They don't. They prefer it. Why? Tell me why. I know some of the hotels have very specific guidelines in regards to how things are packaged and that sort of thing. Pricing. And our price is largely arbitrary, or is it that, you know what, electricity costs more in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we have a high high minimum wage. So if you're hiring people to work on your farms, it's going to cost you more than if this stuff was grown in Costa Rica where they're paying people 50 cents a day.
As the director would have weighed in on that and would have said even to that as Mr. Morris would have indicated, a farmer X here in St. Kitts has 5 acres of planting, and the director would have indicated that a farmer in, as you would have just mentioned, Costa Rica has 68 square miles of planting. Of course, farmer X here in St. Kitts is going to be more manually typed, and the Costa Rican farmer is going to be more mechanized and things. So
And probably paying $1 a day for labor.
And labor costs, again, we think so the cost of production, as the director would have indicated earlier, will weigh in and ultimately on the end cost of what is the end result here. Of course, and you did mention it too, Tony, that sometimes some prices are really arbitrary, and it is one of the things that I think both the ministries in St. Kitts and in Nevis needs to continue to do is have that cost of production and that whole analysis things, maybe as part of what, maybe partnering with some of these financial institutions. As we all know, financially literacy month is coming up in October. So that could be maybe one of the training programs that we could organize with some of the financial institutions, more of the cooperative types that deal with cooperatives and groups, maybe like the St. Kitts Nevis Cooperative Bank and the First Federal and those type of, to really have that maybe really sit down decision and things so that farmers do have that necessary things that by the time they do reach the end result, that they can really cost their product to say, as the director would have indicated, you have different scenarios. Hey, if I have a 10% markup, this is what it is.
Okay.
This is a 20% markup, a 15% thing. So as the director would have put the analogy that when you go into a store here, they could say, hey, if you buy one, you could get this one thing because they already have all that different schematics and scenes run. So I think different schematics and scenes run. So I think that is an area both St. Kitts and Nevis can collaborate in maybe in October with the financial institutions to gear to some of that.
I have a related question, Mr. Elliott. So you can make your point and perhaps address this as well then. Okay, so we've established, yes, there's something to be done about the how we price, but the bottom line is the cost of production is more than on a, massive farms where labor costs and so on are less. So is there a way to get the public buy-in, to educate the public on why it's important to buy local, that they are in fact supporting the country?
Well, this we wanted to get.
Okay, all right.
Because you see, we may sit here as technicians, and sometimes we as technicians, sometimes we're guilty in terms of bashing farmers. Sometimes we're guilty of bashing farmers, and sometimes farmers are guilty of bashing the technicians also. But I think it's time for us to start to look at the wider scope of things as it relates to the population. We have to start to connect the dots here in St. Kitts Nevis, all right, as it relates to our farmers are producing food. And I think, like, for instance, when here in St. Kitts we do the night markets and so forth, it's an opportunity for persons to come out, not just to shop, but for persons to come out to look and see who are the ones who are producing their foods, who are the farmers, who are the fishermen, who are the ones that are producing them and their food. And I think that is very important, because unless we come to a point where our consumers, our local consumers, starting to demand local food, then our importers will continue what they do. Right? You have to come to a point where our consumers start to demand local food. You have to come to a point where our Ministry of Health also have to get on board, because sometimes when you look at the data as it relates to the non-communicable diseases that are here in St. Kitts Nevis, a lot of it is hinged on what we eat. And if you look at even data that the Ministry of Health even support individuals who may fall ill to these diseases. I'm of the belief that if they're eating locally, they're eating healthy, they're eating more balanced meals, then that reduction in terms of these diseases would occur. That reduction in terms of government having to support, having to fund some of these things would reduce. So that money is now could be used for other things. That money could even be put aside and say, you know what? Let us start to do a robust farmers insurance policy. Because you would have heard him say that for 3 years he would have lost his planting. But it is just not paying him because he's lost his planting. When I go on his 5-acre block, I need to see, okay, do you have windbreaks? Do you have windbreaks on your farm? What are you doing? What have you been doing to ensure that your crop is not constantly damaged? And if you have these things in place, then you could qualify for some sort of compensation.
Okay.
But again, you also spoke of, in terms of traditional farmers, what makes them so different? If you look at some of these non-traditional farmers in Nevis now, like for instance, and I like to call his name, Paris leafy greens. You go in the supermarket, it's branded. It's branded, Paris leafy greens. So you see it there, you see the Sinkers Nevis flag on it, you see the barcodes, right? So you know it's a local commodity. When I go and I look at planting, I don't know who planting is.
Yeah,
So
planting is
planting
planting.
is planting.
Yeah.
And I think that some of these small tweaks is what we need to start to look at. For us in Nevis, we, at our abattoir, case scenarios, everyone knows of the products from our abattoir, but we also brand our products. So when persons go, they see our logo, Department of Agriculture by local. Once you see that, you know it is something that is produced in Nevis. So persons gravitate towards it. So it is time for us here in the Federation to start to brand and demand local produce.
Okay.
That's the only
So we need to educate the public on why that's so important. And we do, you know, on St. Kitts we have our Eat Local thing, even Restaurant Week of, you know, but we do have a Eat Local, and we have our Agriculture Day and those sorts of things. But for that period of time, everybody's all excited about local produce, and then we go right back to the imported stuff. So it has to be an ongoing thing.
In my time, we used to collaborate with the Nutrition Surveillance Unit. Everybody know the lady who used to run it, Tin Lady there. And we used to go to the public health nurses, Ms. Phipps and so on. And we used to do a fair every year, a food fair, every year, collaboration between the Agriculture Department, Nutrition Surveillance Unit, Sylvia Manning, I don't know if you remember her.
I know the name.
Right, we were good friends. And we do that every single year, where we promote the quality of the food, the nutritional aspect of the food, and everything in relation to that. And we do it every year. And I can still remember one lady who comes there religiously every year, a clear lady. And so we need to go back to that.
Okay.
And so on, something like that, and get the food on the market, let people see it, what it's good for, where it comes from, the quality of the food, and so on. But otherwise than that, and then the thing that I am not really liking the saying, where the guys are saying, that the people over there, they have 60-something acres of sun, and we just got a little bit. And so that don't sit well with me at all, because we produce a lot of material from that area. Our country is small. Understand me? And when we produce our stuff as farmers, we need to get it sold.
Okay.
We can't sit by and say they're cheaper than us, and which in fact is not true. Because our product is just the same, similar price on the market, even lower price on the market. My plantains are cheaper than the rest.
Okay.
My plant are cheaper than the rest, and so the other people. So it's really not true what they're saying, that they're cheaper,
well,
and so on.
It seems to me that there's some gaps in communication.
In communication, networking, that's all I'm talking about.
All right, so these are things that need to be addressed, most definitely. And things like, you know, coordinating a food fair. By the way, the Nevis Agriculture Food Fair, it's just one of my favorite things ever to attend in the Federation is the food fair. So we should be doing things like this, but then it comes down to coordination. Who is in charge and who is supposed to do it? I've found my observation, and even with farmers, is that it's almost as though somebody else needs to do it and needs to coordinate them. I remember some years ago, Marriott was really challenged. Well, I shouldn't have said the name, but one of the hotels was challenged to purchase locally, and they said they wanted to. There were issues of branding and packaging and so on. And so the Farmers Cooperative, one of them was working on it. And then I checked in on them a few months later. And it's like, oh yeah, well, we couldn't deliver how many they wanted. And so what was issues of reliability and so on.
Yeah.
And it was almost as though there was one person in the cooperative who was trying to do everything. So we definitely have a problem, I think, with, is it the ministry or the department that has to take that role of coordinating all the marketing? I mean, surely the farmer themselves have a responsibility. But the flip side of that is you might have a farmer and his thing is farming. His thing isn't going into the supermarket to sell to Mr. So-and-so.
Right.
So
that's what the difficulty
but
is.
I think it appears to me that you all are saying that's an area that needs to be.
It needs a lot of work. Needs a lot of work on that to do.
So with that said, I don't even know if I should be asking this question, because I was going to ask, how do we get more young people involved? How do we get people to get involved in agriculture? There was a perception once upon a time that farmers were aging, and that young people didn't want to get their hands dirty and so on, and it wasn't seen as something attractive to them. But I'm not sure if we should be talking about bringing new farmers in when the existing farmers are so challenged. And if the issue isn't supply but distribution, then maybe we should be looking at sorting out what's going on the ground now before we look to bring in more people into a system that's not as functioning as effectively as it could. I'm not criticizing.
The system is workable.
Is it working?
Yeah. No, the system is workable.
Workable. Okay, fair. Right? And I wanted to hear that, yeah.
And one of the things that we have started doing, because just like you said, you have the issue currently with planting, right? And it is just a planting. There are times in the year you have the issue with different crops. And what we have realized is data sharing is very important. Yeah. Data sharing is very important. We at the ministry can't just have the data and our farmers don't know, right? Sometimes we might look and say, okay, the average demand for sweet peppers for St. Kitts Nevis, average within a month, a normal month, it's about 20,000 pounds on a normal month. But it might peak different times. Question is, does farmers know this? So that's one question. Does farmers know this? Again, if farmers know this, how do we coordinate so all farmers don't be planting at the same time? How do we coordinate?
And who should be coordinating?
Well, most
is that the role of the department? And I'm okay with
most
it.
times,
somebody's got to coordinate,
Nevis,
right?
For Nevis, the coordination is done within the ministry by the extension officer. What happens sometimes is that although one might say, okay, we need X amount of crops planted for X period, and you know your farmers, so you know those who are going to give you 10 pounds from a tree, you know those who are going to give you 4 pounds, you know those who are going to give you 15. You know your farmers, so you sequence the numbers of seedlings accordingly. But within the same breath at times, you have those farmers who still feel like they don't do what they want. And it happens all the time. So, but we have to be able to come to some common ground where those who comply and those who do not comply, some common ground where they understand that if we go way beyond this, all of us will suffer. If we go way under this, what's coming off of the boat is going to squeeze us. So we have to come to that point where everybody have to understand and everybody is willing to work forward. Because you might take the stuff to the marketing division, you may take 20,000 pounds to the marketing division, but you may have another 10,000 pounds that you go to the supermarket. And the marketing division is probably saying, okay, $2 a pound. And you go to the supermarket and offering 150. And these are just experiences that I've seen over the years, right? So, but farmers and technicians, we have to come to a point where we all understand that we need the same thing. and it's to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis is a little more food secured.
Okay. So we have the soil, we have the expertise. Generally speaking, we have the climate safe for and we should be able to produce fairly cost effectively. The biggest challenge is that coordination and communication and education.
The human factor.
And can realistically the departments of agriculture on the two islands, can you guys do this? I mean, do you have the manpower to do it? Do you have the connections to do it? Are you going to call a town hall meeting and the same 5 people are going to show up? Or 10?
Or 10. If you were to look at St. Kitts Nevis, right, I'm of the belief that there's enough land allotted for agriculture that can feed St. Kitts Nevis and others. I'm of that belief.
Allotted right now?
Yeah, I'm of that belief.
Okay.
Because there are lands that you might find a farmer, for instance, with, I'm just calling a figure, 5 acres of land. But if you really look at the production, it's only 2 acres. So I'm of the belief that there's enough land here in St. Kitts, allotted for agriculture, that can feed, that could feed us.
That is not being effectively used?
Yes.
Okay.
And can feed us in terms of with key crops. Not everything.
Right.
Yeah. But with key crops. Crops.
All right.
That enough land is allotted to feed us with key crops.
Right.
All right.
So let me ask all of you all this then. At least what we hear on St. Kitts a lot of the times that farmers are saying they don't have access to land. They can't get the land that they need. And is there a way, like when we look at current land use policies, and I'm not sure how land is distributed, I'm assuming it's leased or made available for sale, but how do we prioritize and incentivize, if you will, productive agriculture? How do we make sure? So you're saying you think that there's enough land. Farmers on St. Kitts are saying they don't think. What do you think?
Well, we
do you all have enough land?
To me, I think so.
So it's not the availability that's the challenge.
It's basically is management. Is a management issue. Really.
I think we just
a management issue,
okay.
And sometimes outside factors like climatic factors and so on that will affect you. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes you can't produce the crops that you want because you don't have water.
Right, but that's aside, it comes down to management.
But other than that, it comes down to management. For me, my farm is a small farm, and only about 8 acres that comfortably. And it is fully occupied. Fully occupied. I have the whole place is on the drip irrigation, and everywhere you see that water drips, something grows. Okay. So the policy on the farm is that we do what is known as multiple cropping. We do multiple cropping. We do intercropping. So for one, like for instance, we put in 2 plots this week. We have 1 plot that has in 3 crops. 3. We have tomato, we have seasoned pepper, and we have okra. 1 plot. So when we harvesting, 3 crops harvesting. Nice. Or one is harvesting at one time and otherwise.
What's the advantage of that compared to somebody who's saying, I'm going to put my whole 8 acres on the peppers?
Good cash flow.
Okay.
Consistent, sustainable.
So the multiple cropping is...
That's the key. For me, I mean, that's what I push. I mean, for when I was teaching in Keon High School, okay. I teach them multiple cropping, and they come on the farm and they operate on it and so on. And then, and then I have another plot that I put down, and it has watermelons, it has squash, and it has sorrel. Yeah. So when the melon down there good, nice and good, my sorrel up here nice and good. You understand?
Plus it's a bit of a risk if you put all your land under one crop, because if you get the tomato blight, you're in trouble.
For his practice,
that works.
It's good. It's good as it relates to him as an individual.
Yeah.
Where he's able to have a cash flow from multiple crops. But also in his case, what I recommend is that other farmers are working closely with him, because You may tap into a hotel with seasoned pepper, watermelons, squash.
And the amount that they want at a time.
So your crop is whole in the market for a month. When you finish, they have to wait another 3 months down the road.
Right.
So that is
To
why
supply?
To supply. So
Not
that's why
in my place, not necessarily.
that's why it's good for him to in these practices that you have
Coordination.
multiple farmers,
Which takes coordination, management.
That's the system that I have.
Yeah.
Because other farmers will have.
And you
And I
all talk.
use them.
Right.
You know? So when my customer says, Mr. Morris, I need so much and so much cucumbers.
You will get them.
Can you get? I say, I'm gonna shoot the message.
Okay.
And sometimes in less than an hour, I have
what they're looking
I tell
for.
somebody, drop that, drop that, drop that.
Okay.
So they are really into me now, you know, in terms of that.
Because they know that they can get what they need from you.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Morris and Mr. Chapman and Mr. Elliott, we do have to take a quick pause for just a break. We're almost out of time, and there's still so much to talk about. We're going to have to sort of wrap up as we address the last couple of questions. And we'll be back after a quick break.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 42 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this episode, we discuss From Farm to Fork, making St. Kitts and Nevis food secure and self-sufficient.
Could you see your children's future dwindling?
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 42 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this episode, we discuss From Farm to Fork, making St. Kitts and Nevis food secure and self-sufficient.
Could you see your children's future dwindling?
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 42 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this episode, we discuss From Farm to Fork, making St. Kitts and Nevis food secure and self-sufficient.
Could you see your children's future dwindling?
Welcome back to Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward. I'm Toni Frederick-Armstrong. I'm joined today by Mr. Randy Elliott, the Director of Agriculture, Mr. Ian Chapman, the Crops Director of Agriculture, Nevis, Mr. Ian Chapman, who's the Crops Leader at the Department of Agriculture. We have this farmer and former educator, Mr. Winston Morris, and we're discussing From Farm to Fork, making St. Kitts and Nevis food secure and self-sufficient. We've had a very interesting discussion, gentlemen. We have about half an hour left, but there are a couple of important things that I'd like us to address. So even as you may want to pick up the tail end of something that we've already spoken about. If we can try and sort of roll it all into that. Where we are so far, for those of you who may have just joined us or haven't heard us, the conversation from the beginning, essentially what we can agree upon is that we have what we need here to sustain ourselves. And the big issue is management and coordination. And there are other things, yes, but those are the main things. So it's doable, it's workable, right, Mr. Elliott? It's workable. So I guess that's a starting point, and you agree that the departments should take the lead, just in light of the fact that they would be in touch with everybody. Every farmer might not know every farmer, but the agriculture department should have some kind of contact with. Okay. So now, with that said, we don't want to be talking about sustainability without addressing some of the newer technologies that are very exciting. We spoke a bit about the covered farming, and you've got the shade houses, and we have the vertical farming and the hydroponics. And we're getting some really good results. But as you mentioned, it costs quite a bit to invest. But do you see that? Is there a role for both? You know, we will always need our hand in the soil kind of farming, right? So how would you say, what role then with the sort of urban agriculture, which is pretty much what it is? Because, you know, if you could be living in a residential area and be doing some vertical farming in a shade house in your backyard. So the role of the urban farmer.
What's happening now is in St. Kitts Nevis, and in Nevis is basically everyone needs or wishes to own a piece of the land. And as a result, land availability for open type farming is getting less and less and less and less. And that's just a reality. And as we, as a federation, move towards a sustainable future, we have to be able to mitigate, we have to be able to build resilience within our practices. And resilience not always maybe climatic conditions, but resilience as it relates to our land space is getting less. And what we have found in terms of greenhouse technology as it relates to, we're able to cultivate and produce significant larger volumes in a smaller space. And that has been key in terms of what we have been seeing. Again, as mentioned before, you see, what we have seen is non-traditional farmers are getting into it. But also, you're seeing younger individuals getting into this kind of technology. I know sometimes persons, I don't want young persons, I don't want to put me under the soil, etc., etc. So technology is there for the younger generation also. And as land space continues to get smaller, we may realize that outside of just greenhouses and hydro, we might actually have to start to get even more deeper into vertical. We would have done it in one of the schools in Nevis before, as it relates to a vertical practice. Currently, I'm working with an individual to see in terms of making local vertical structures on island, rather than so they don't have to necessarily import these things. But there's a future for it, because as long as there's civilization, we have to eat. But we also have to be mindful that we cannot turn our back on traditional farming practices. We cannot turn our back on that, because these also has its place. These are what our federation was built on in terms of these traditional practice. And these practices requires there are some crops that requires these sort of practices. Like if you're looking more in terms of our root tubers, our onions, musaceae, etc., carrots, etc., we'll still need some of these traditional practice. What I've seen within recent, and I guess that is what fuel the conversation as it relates to the food import, is that we're seeing multiple foods coming into the country now, which are contributing to our food importation bill. So again, there's an issue in terms of what are we going to continue to eat going forward? Are we going to continue to eat processed food? Are we going to be eating our local carrots, melons, red fruit, etc.? So these are things that we have to look at.
Now, we've been talking today, gentlemen, about crops.
Yeah, livestock.
Livestock. What about animal husbandry? How are we doing with that? I see some great numbers. That's something the Agriculture Department tends to put out on numbers in regards to pork and beef and so on. Are we doing okay? Are we still importing too much chicken? What's the story?
Well, so quickly, of course, we all know we are self-sufficient in egg production throughout mainly 11 months of the year in the Federation, mainly in December, where, of course, the highest demand for egg is where
and we get
persons
shortages.
like you, and where the shortages is normally for persons like you, Tony, like to, cook up the storm and bake and those type of stuff. So that is the shortfall. In terms of pork, it is one of the other aspects where we are doing quite well. Of course, you just mentioned meat consumption in terms of poultry. This is one of the avenues where the country has greatest potential in its livestock component. Of course, as the director would have just mentioned about data, we have a net import of over $67 million EC of chicken in the Federation annually. So this is one of these conversations that we are now having with our poultry farmers, especially new entrants into the poultry sector. Instead of trying to go into maybe egg production, we would need to now start to look at the dynamics of going into the poultry meat production area. Of course, the beef and small ruminants always have its numbers, but still have room for improvement. Of course, we are of the tradition more type of the normal things, and one of the things between both departments and ministries in St. Kitts Nevis, we are now training our personals to do what they would call the choice cuts and more having, so that we're able to produce the ribeye and the different steak cuts that is required here on island and the thing. So
No, is it just a matter of knowing how to cut the meat? I mean, are our cows, are we producing a good quality beef in the first place?
Not just knowing how to cut it, but at the right age where the animals needs to be harvested, or obviously because I'm probably, but wherever they need to be brought to the market for that type of thing. So instead of maybe just going around quick, if we want to say we're going for lamb racks, we can't wait until the animal maybe now is 3 years old. We are not going to get that lamb rack thing. So that is why maybe lamb rack may be costing someone maybe like $100 and something just for that little piece of ram, because you're now harvesting an animal with maybe just 6 months old to get that thing. So it all depends on the market. And
generally, are we doing better with our proteins, with our meat production than crops? I'm not talking in terms of volume, and just in terms of the systems and the process and the things we've talked about, the marketing and so on. Is that working a bit more efficiently?
Yeah, for Nevis, yes, because you always have that demand. For instance, we don't just slaughter, we don't just do cuts. We also do like burgers, sausages, and these kind of things. So the demand is there.
And it's being met?
No, we don't have enough.
Okay. But that's not okay. So there's potential.
There's a lot of potential
all right.
for it.
St. Kitts, are we getting there?
We're getting there.
Okay. I'm keeping an eye on the time. As we wrap up, I want to ask each of you all, and if I could keep you all to just a couple of minutes so we have a little wiggle room at the end. I want you to envision what each of you, what you see a food secure St. Kitts and Nevis should look like or will look like in 10 years if we get it right. And in doing it, I need you to speak to the public out there, all those folks in St. Kitts and Nevis and abroad. We understand that we're being broadcast abroad as well. Their role in making sure that happens. You're going to start, Mr. Morris?
I'll start, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So imagine you're talking to your students and the bell is going to ring in 2 minutes.
Okay, cool. All right. My thing is full coordination between all parties in getting the food to the table. There are a number of issues, and sometimes we don't even talk to one another, and so on. How are we going to get it to the market if we're not talking? We need to be talking, and all the parties involved, those who provide the inputs and so on, we have to talk. We have to talk, and we have to have it as a network. If the network is not working, then we're not going to get the food on the table. That is really my take on it. Networking is more serious than it. I'll tell you something. When you're selling a product, 90% of the sale pitch is network. Me and you. 5% is price. That's sale. That's your sale. And it's a very serious matter. Based on my experience, you have to network. And how I network is awesome. So the first time when I go to the supermarket, I get a big old dirty broad smile from the person who I'm networking with. And my job is done. I just have to put in my products.
Okay.
Come, Mr. Morris, come. I'm good. People say it's luck, but it is not luck.
It's your communication skills.
You have to make an effort to go out there and meet the people, talk with them.
But bearing in mind, not everybody has that. That's a natural. You either have it or you don't.
That's why I help some of the guys,
Well
because they can't talk like that.
Okay.
And they're shy. Mm-hmm. They produce well, you know. Mm-hmm. But by that ain't me thing, you know. Mm-hmm. And that is why we get here.
Okay.
So we need to network.
So can we get there? You think in 10 years we could?
We could get there, but we have to make a concerted effort to do it together.
Okay. Mr. Chapman.
My vision for St. Kitts Nevis in the next 10 years, of course, that food import bill that we currently have rising over somewhat $200 million across all sectors, crops, livestock, fish, agro-processed products, becomes what I know CARICOM have 25% target, but of course I would, in the next 10 years, would like to say, if I'm around, that would be somewhat under 50%, with the proper, as Mr. Morris would indicate, with the proper investments and infrastructural development in the agricultural sector, both from the government side and both from the farmers and possible investors side component, to make sure that we have that proper chain, as you would have heard me mention earlier, all the actors along the chain working together to make sure that we have that comprehensive chain from supplier right down to the consumer. And of course, our country is consuming far more of local products, of course, and maybe 1 or 2 or even 10, 20 million years in the agricultural sector.
And Mr. Elliott?
Well, from what I like to see within the next 10 years is a population that understands that the farmers cannot do it by themselves, and the population that demands the local consumption, local produce. I'd also like to put it out to the population also, for especially property owners, homeowners, have your own little backyards that grow things that you know you use on a regular basis. Plant a fruit tree, right? And these are things that we try to encourage persons that if you look back, for instance, and it's a conversation I've been having with farmers as of late, that even at your farm, if we have another COVID pandemic, can your farm feed your family? And that's a question that you need to ask. Can your farm feed your family? And if your farm cannot feed your family, then how are you going to feed a nation?
Trouble.
Right? So for the next 10 years, I would like to see persons focus more in terms of having one or two fruit trees in the yard, their own little backyard gardens, support the local farmers in terms of things that they cannot grow, and a country with a mentality that eat what we grow and grow what we eat.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, I feel despite what our fears that we would not be able to fill this program, we have more than done so. And that just tells me that there's still conversation to be had. This session today really identified more issues than actually coming up with specific solutions. But you all did have some ideas, which tells me, as you said, that there's hope. We've definitely identified that there is a communication challenge, that we need a bit more focus on the marketing, the branding, which includes presentation, education, both of the farmers and the public, and certainly in the schools. There's a conversation that didn't even really make it onto the air, but the role of the schools and school farms and even incorporating that into cooking as well, and maybe the business subjects and so on. If there's a way to have a holistic way to teach at the school level all of those aspects. And but of course, as you say, the big thing being the public buy-in. So we really, I hope it's a start of a conversation. It's certainly not a completed conversation. I want to thank the public as well who joined us. Conversations, reflections, and looking at the way forward. It's a series that it's been hosted by the Independence 42 Anniversary Committee, and we will be doing this for 3 more Wednesdays, same time. And next week, Wednesday, we're going to be looking at what role should our global family play in building St. Kitts and Nevis. And so we look forward to that. And there may well be a part of agriculture in there, if maybe that's where some of the investment can come from. So I'm certainly going to raise it with our panelists next week. Let's link some of these conversations that we have. But we do want to thank you all very much for joining us today. And gentlemen, it was an absolute pleasure. And I hope that even privately we can continue this conversation. It's very dear to my heart. Have a lovely afternoon, everyone.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 42 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections, and a Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this episode, we discuss From Farm to Fork, making St. Kitts and Nevis food secure and self-sufficient.
Could you see your children's future dwindling?
Can you highlight?
I got it.
Well, it's always